Hey, it's your buddy Moo Juice Magic here. All right, so I've been watching Mike Tyson fight for a very long time. I've watched all of his fights at one point or another, a lot of them live, none of them in person, but it's irrelevant. If you were able to tune into Netflix last night, because that's a whole nother fiasco, Netflix, a lot of people just saw a buffering screen. I didn't. I went to the local bar down the street where I play pool, and they had the fight on. No buffering. It was fine. Now I missed the fight right before these two gals fought it out, an Irish gal and I'm not sure if the other gal is Puerto Rican or whatever, but I didn't see the whole fight. I just saw the aftermath. Holy crap! Those two girls. I was watching some of the highlights. They were fighters, man. That was impressive. That was an impressive fight from what I saw. Just the highlight reels were impressive, and oh man, they beat the piss out of each other. So kudos to those girls. They are that was the fight of the night because the main event, if you want to call that an actual fight and not like a WWE style fraudulent thing, that I can't even think of a better term aside from a thrown fight. I've seen a lot of fights in my life, a lot of boxing, a lot of MMA. Uh, and I've seen some fights that were clearly thrown, some that were very controversial and well known, others that were just obvious that we just didn't talk about too much because I mean we knew palms were being greased somewhere. We knew bookies were making some serious money that had the inside scoop, and we knew some things were awry. But what I saw last night was one of the most offensive, insulting things to happen to the sport of boxing and to boxing fans since Don King. Actually, it might have been worse than Don King. And if you don't know who Don King is, guys, go back and look him up. Don King was a boxing promoter that took over the reins for Mike Tyson and pretty much steadily rose Mike Tyson up financially while destroying him as a person for a very long time. And it was pretty bad. He took Iron Mike from the man who originally trained him, Costamato, who saw in Mike Tyson what he is, a different creature. He is not a human being. He's a machine made for boxing. That's who Mike Tyson was. What I saw last night was what you'd expect from a Mike Tyson that was at a kid's boxing camp, coaching kids, or that he didn't take a nap. And this was not just Mike Tyson's old, so he got tired. Tyson's hands were still up the whole time. He kept his freaking hands up. He wasn't dropping his hands. He was getting a little winded, but I mean, he's 58 years old and dancing around and not hitting people. That gets you kind of tiring in those lights and in that audience. And when I say not hitting people, to clarify, I think from my count, he threw about a third of his average punches per round the entire freaking match. That's unfathomable for someone who comes out of the gate immediately knocking the people the hell out. Dude, Mike Tyson didn't even want to swing, it felt like. There was maybe a couple shots thrown that looked like they might have landed, but that would have been the same if it was a fake fight. I don't think, my first warning sign, to clarify, was when I finally saw the slap during the weigh-in. I finally saw that yesterday, about an hour or so before I saw the fight. And I immediately went on Facebook, on my personal Facebook, and I'm like, that seems staged. Might have been a couple hours before. But I'm like, that seemed staged. That seemed like some WWE stuff. I was already leery of this fight even happening because it was an actual sanctioned fight according to the Athletic Commission in Texas, which shame on you because watching that fight, I don't believe that fight was real. I don't think that was a legitimate fight. If you think that fight was real, I think you haven't watched enough boxing. I get that if you're a young guy and you've never really seen Mike Tyson's fights, and you've just seen Jake Paul fight, you got to keep in mind Mike Tyson fought the best of the best most of the time. He did fight some knuckleheads, guys. He got thrown some knuckleheads for sure. But overall, he was fighting the cream of the crop, the guys. And it showed. The damage showed on both men often. Mike Tyson has some incredible knockout power. Jake Paul has some decent knockout power. I'm not going to take that from him. You saw none of that from either of them, even kind of. They were both pulling punches. It was very obvious in how their bodies were connecting in the kinesiology of the physiology, how they were moving in general, how the strikes were landing, where their shoulder placement was at the end. You could see their hands stopping at the last second. It was a fake fight, guys. This was a glorified sparring match. This was not This should not have been a sanctioned bout. So the second warning I had was when I looked at the actual rules for the fight. Now, there was a rumor I want to address first that there was a no knockout clause. On paper, that clause doesn't exist. According to the sanction, that clause is not there. That is not a thing that happened for that fight. What did happen was thus. They had 14-ounce gloves, which made no sense. I know that the people that rule these things that don't actually understand how fights work think that those bigger gloves mean less damage to your dome. That's quite the opposite of true. Those big, patty, bulky gloves do more damage than your bare hand does. I know because I've been hit by both, and I've received way more damage getting hit by something in a big, padded glove than I have by people that are rocking bare knuckles in a street fight or a fist fight in general. It's not the same experience. You get more cuts and bruises and stuff from hands, but you get a lot more CTE and like your brain bouncing off the your skull inside from having a big padded thing hit you and having that reverberated fucking, whatever. I'm not a scientist. I just, I've been hit a lot. I've been doing martial arts my whole life. And I boxed, etc. Guys, listen. The second thing that bugged me about this was the rounds, okay? And this doesn't bug me so much. It makes for a faster fight across the board, but I don't like it for boxing. And this was, they did 2-minute rounds and did 8 of them. Now, for reference, Paul's been fighting 10 3-minute rounds, okay? Pretty standard, pretty good number, pretty fair. It's not the 12 5-minute rounds, that we should have in boxing. Some of those fights turn into hugging matches real quick, guys. But anyway, so that was kind of okay, that's kind of weird. And then I looked at the last rule they had listed, and that was none of the rounds count until after the 4th. That is if you ever see that in a fight, that is a sign that this is not a real match, because that means that knockouts are off the table for 4 rounds. That means you're tired, your fighter's going to be super tired. That means your fighters are going to be trying to win by points, making for an incredibly boring boxing match. And that is what this was. If this was a real fight, this was the most boring match I have ever watched in my entire fucking life. I have watched Metamoris Jiu-Jitsu matches go on forever that were more entertaining and more exciting than this. And for those of you who don't know what that means, there's guys that get down and grapple with each other and will be in one position slowly trying to work out of it for a half an hour. And it's more entertaining and exciting than what I witnessed. You had an amped up audience from the entrance from Jake Paul coming in a car. And just, it was the dumbest thing. I know he was making a slight at Mike Tyson the entire time with the walk-in song. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. We've all seen The Hangover, etc. Mike Tyson came out to music. Okay, already different. Not what I would expected. Walked out to the ring like a man, got in the ring and stood there and effectively almost sparred with Jake Paul for 8 rounds. I was looking at the fight count, the count where the judges are trying to score and looking at what they're counting as punches, and I think they're on all the methamphetamine. Those judges should probably be removed from their job. I usually think this about fight judges, though. The scorecards are usually the dumbest thing in the fight. In this case, it's a toss-up. Is it the scorecard or is it the actual bout? Which is the dumbest? Or is it the people watching it thinking that this was a legitimate fight? Or the people that paid to be in that stadium? Because about 2 rounds in, if that, you see the people in the stadium mood change completely and no one is having a good time. I'll tell you what though, if you look around the audience and you see a Celsius can, these people that are holding those are making sure they hold them where the camera can see them. And they're turning them when they know the camera's looking so the label's facing straight. There was someone talking to those folks. This was a fucking commercial. This wasn't a boxing match. This was insulting to the legacy of Mike Tyson. This was insulting to the legacy of Casamano. This is insulting to fans, insulting to the great sport of boxing. Boxing is already dying, and this is a nail in the coffin for me. I don't see another fight coming up, another headline fight that's going to make up for this. This is why I've been watching more MMA than anything recently, because it's an actual sport where people are actually fighting. There's actual passion in it, and these guys aren't making millions and millions of dollars to throw fights or to fight under bullshit rules to fight a YouTuber who's as good as an amateur boxer. And that's a reality. This guy, Jake Paul, is nowhere near as good as the guys Mike fought. The weakest guys Mike fought could have beat this dude at all. It's not even close. He wouldn't even have been in the top 100 in Mike Tyson's prime. I know Mike Tyson's 58, guys, but you have to understand this, newer guys, when you're younger and you don't know, you just don't know what you don't know. This is a different kind of thing altogether. What Mike Tyson is doing sparring is more energetic, more impactful than what I saw last night. And this is what insults me the most. Mike Tyson took a paycheck to do this. You guys might look at it, especially if you've never boxed, or if you're just a huge Jake Paul fan and you have nothing to lose by hating on Tyson, because that's what it's going to boil down to. If you thought this was at all a legitimate fight, you're incorrect, guys. I'm sorry. If you've never boxed, you don't know what you don't know. If you've never really watched boxing outside of Jake Paul bringing in new people, that might have been an exciting fight for you. You might have thought that was legitimate. But if you've ever really been involved in a boxing match or watched a boxing match, you know that that wasn't legit. You know that things were wrong there. And it should piss you off. I know people that are in the bar that don't watch fights at all, that barely know anything about boxing, that were fucking fuming. And not because they wanted Mike Tyson to win. Some of these people were rooting for Jake Paul. Believe it or not, there were people out there rooting for the guy. And I even said, hey man, there's a possibility Paul could drop him. If this is a legitimate fight, Paul has some stopping power. And it boiled down to, if this is a real fight, the only real factor was, can Mike Tyson take a hit at 58 years old? He didn't have to find out. Those hits were not good enough to knock me out, to knock out a child, let alone Mike freaking Tyson or Jake freaking Paul. Neither of them were throwing significant strikes that really mattered in a fight. They matter for a scorecard, but they were obviously not trying to win. They were trying to go to decision, I guess. The only thing I can think is there was an off-the-table agreement, an under-the-table agreement between Tyson and Paul, and Tyson walked away with a shit ton of money and a big Sully mark on his career. And now we have to listen to Jake Paul's ass gloat about how he beat Mike fucking Tyson in a boxing match. The only way Jake Paul can prove that he's a boxer at all is to fight a boxer in a real boxing match with real boxing match rules. That's it. And frankly, no one cares about boxing anymore. We're not seeing Mike Tyson's. There's a reason people think Jake Paul is a good boxer. Because the people like Mike Tyson and coming up in Mike Tyson's era, they've all moved to MMA. People with that passion for the fight and wanting to be the best, they've gone to something that is significant and matters now. They've gone to MMA, they've gone to martial arts. They're not wasting their time with pugilism and getting CTE just to get hit. Believe it or not, guys, in an MMA bout, it might look more brutal. You're taking a lot less damage than you are in an actual boxing match. You're only hitting people in the head and the body in a boxing match. You're only using your fists in a boxing match. In MMA, you get a lot of different options, and that leaves for a lot of different choices for damage, a lot less long-term damage over the run, a lot safer sport, a lot more of a friendly sport, a real sport is MMA. And I think that the one thing that turned out good from this, the only thing that turned out good from this fight, quote unquote, was now we know that boxing is officially dead. So anyway, let me know what you guys thought of the fight in the comments below. If you think boxing's dead, I don't know. Those two girls that fought before that fight, I hope they get a career from it. But if they're smart, they'll switch to MMA where the passion stays. Anyway, guys, if you like the video, like it. I'm your buddy Moojus Magic, and I love you in the face. Bye.